and I mean it.
It's a woman's privilege to change her mind, especially after so many years in hypersleep. More precisely, it's been 7 years since Ridley Scott scared us all to death with Alien. As the film's last survivor, Sigourney Weaver returned to Pinewood for Aliens, this time for the dynamic young Canadian director James Cameron, who also decided to shoot his film in England.
In a sense, it's nice to have this first film as a rehearsal, you know, for this experience. I actually had a very frank talk with Gail, the producer, and Jim, because I certainly didn't really want to do a sequel unless we felt that there was something else that needed to be said about it, you know. And I felt their purpose in doing it was their own, you know, not to sort of cash in on the success of the first, but really that there was something in that story that they wanted to finish.
I think that the thing that made it really a milestone as a science fiction film, as opposed to as a design film or as a film in general, was the emphasis on creating a real, lived-in, believable, real-time, you are there, you can sympathize with these people because you're standing right behind them sort of world, sort of environment. And that's what made it fascinating.
We'll be shooting on M Stage. I had worked for Roger Corman, and we did a film called Galaxy of Terror, which was Roger's definitive paean to be charitable to Alien. And I was working as a designer and an effects man, and that's what attracted me to the project, the opportunity to create another world.
Do you have to be pretty careful about security? I mean, closed set and things.
What closed set? I don't see a closed set. You can't come in here. Back. It's a closed set.
Everyone's a comedian.
Sorry, I can't help it. I'm behind the camera all the time. I don't get to have any fun. Roll camera. Action, Nigel. Cut. Let's try it again. When you reach for the control, make the whole action a little slower, like you're sort of settling into it. Just sort of like that. See what I mean? Yeah, let's pull back. Okay, stop there. Peter, why did you move that back? No. Put it back in. I didn't ask for that to be moved. Roll camera. You ready, David?
Okay, yeah. Speed.
And action, Nigel. Cut. We might have a second camera position depending on... A lot of directors who aren't artists or designers themselves have to say, do 3 and I'll pick 1. I say, do this and that's it. I mean, without being autocratic. I mean, it's a big sort of creative family, and a lot of people are pouring their ideas into the creative stock pot. But it allows you to, you know, make a film more efficiently. I think there are low budget movies, there are high budget movies, and then there are no waste movies. I like to think of myself as a no waste filmmaker.
I think he combines visual excellence with a great design sense and a phenomenal ability to communicate with the actors, which tends to be lacking in other filmmakers who perhaps are considered visual geniuses.
Sigourney Weaver had mixed feelings about returning to the first major role of her film career.
Oh, I imagine she was probably reluctant. I mean, I think any actor would be in a situation like that. There'd always be a sort of a blend of reluctance to do the same thing again. I mean, that's the one argument, and on the other hand, a certain sort of pride of authorship in having created a character and getting and that somebody wants you to continue it. And I think those sort of balance out. And I also think that there were enough things enough dimensions in the script for her that she didn't feel like she was doing the same thing again. Although I'm sure there were some moments of deja vu, running around dark corridors with a flamethrower for one.
There we go. Right, cue the air mover and roll camera.
No. 4, 1, 2, take 1. A&D cameras. Second clap after full stop.
And action.
During his filmmaking apprenticeship, Cameron met Gail Ann Hurd, who's now the producer of Aliens. They married shortly after making their first film together.
Our maiden project was The Terminator, which starred Arnold Schwarzenegger as a cyborg who was sent to 1984 Los Angeles from the future to assassinate a young woman.
Our intention with The Terminator was to do a straight, flat-out action picture with parentheses that were science fictional. In other words, something that could take place in your city, in my city, today, tonight, with universal characters, the girl next door sort of thing, something that could happen, conceivably happen to you. But to weave into that one thread, which was strange, bizarre, impossible within our time.
Both James Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd trained in the Roger Corman School of Filmmaking. Corman turns out exploitation movies, but he makes them quickly, cheaply and efficiently, and he's always been prepared to give new young directors their chance. Francis Coppola, Martin Scorsese and Peter Bogdanovich are among his protégés, and what all Corman graduates learn is that however daunting it may at first appear, no problem is insuperable.
Every lesson that you learn from Roger seems negative at first. You only appreciate it after the fact when you go out and make other films. But it's a very healthy respect for budget and time. And also, the most important lesson is that there is always a way to do it. Somehow, some way, there's a way to do it. There are many apocryphal stories of how Roger's done it. If he runs out of light and he doesn't have any, if he's doing a day scene and he doesn't have any lights with him, this is, going back some years into the late 50s or early 60s. He gets all the cars from the unit, lines them up and switches on the headlights, that sort of thing. There's always a way to do it.
He didn't just learn the shortcuts. In Rambo, he showed his mettle as a screenwriter. He wrote this sequel to First Blood in collaboration with Sylvester Stallone, although this was one movie he wasn't tempted to direct.
I tend to think that it might not have worked out, because when I work with actors, I work toward a very specific vision, and generally speaking, I can mold them to my idea of what the scene is about, and not that it's a totalitarian situation by any means, but I have a feeling that with working with Sylvester, it might have been the other way around, and. But I couldn't say. I don't want to be closed-minded about it. I just think I would have had to have known him better. The situation was proposed, but I was already in pre-production on Terminator, so I never took it a step further. But I would have tread very carefully on that and seen whether it made sense for Sylvester and I to do that. Who knows? We may have gotten along wonderfully and created a movie that was better than Rambo. A strong military aspect with a lot of military characters, so their weaponry has to look believable. We see several situations in which they live or die by their knowledge and use of their tools, the tools of their trade. We have to see that they understand how to use them, that they look like they've been using them for most of their professional lives, so to speak. I think it goes back more to reality. And if you can give an actor a weapon that has certain weight, has certain functions, and that they can be taught how to use it, they can create their character if they're playing a soldier. And that's really where the attention to detail comes in. I mean, when you're designing a set, you have some walls, you have a door. The actor maybe has to know how to get through the door without tripping. But if it's a weapon, there are a lot of things going on, or any prop, really.
The thing that scares me about the guns is that after you've been using them a couple of days, you go, oh, well, this is, you sort of get into it. And I think that's what happens to people with real guns. And I think Jim Cameron is very anti-gun, too, in his own way, but I think he's fascinated by them in a way that I'm not.
Rico, be a little further. You're supposed to have gotten out first. No, not...
Jeanette, get 1 foot up in the APC. Okay. Here we go, and action.
Quite often a director will storyboard a sequence like this. That's to say, he'll map out the action in advance in a series of two-dimensional drawings. For the special effects scenes, Cameron's taken the process one step further. He uses a home video camera.
Actually, the problem that you always find with storyboards is that they're two-dimensional, and you have to... I seem to use extrapolate a lot, don't I? You have to extrapolate what is essentially a three-dimensional shot from single frames that never communicate the speed of the object or the type of move. And one thing you'll find in this film is that the camera moves a lot. There tends to be in perhaps other films, and perhaps it's in some way related to the two-dimensional storyboards that the effects are normally shot from, that the camera doesn't move. And you can always tell a special effects shot in some films because the camera stops.
Tilt. Go away. I just took my little JVC camcorder and handheld went through the various movements that the special effects shots were to have, and we did that on weekends, even during the normal shooting of the film. Stick up the model and put a couple lights on it and do a video board, and those served as the definitive reference for the actual timing of the shot, how fast it was, how big in frame, et cetera, when I couldn't be around. So it was just a way of sort of doing the shot in advance and then letting them refine it on film. Winston and I did this in about 8 seconds when we were lining up this scene. It worked perfectly. I've got it on my video. Too bad I wasn't shooting 35 mil. Okay, stick it up there. Let's see what you got. All right, now pull it so it lands right on the lens when I say action. There we go, and action. Like a flying facehugger. Wasn't terribly convincing.
I think it's really up to the actors to endow this rubber stuff with life and what it is supposed to be. And you just got to trust it'll look good enough so that you don't look like a fool.
Guys, I want you to pull it so that it looks like it's leaping. Doesn't look like it's leaping. Don't you have gloves? You should get some gloves. You can't pull hard without gloves. Get some gloves and call me when you're ready for this. I think once you've broken through the threshold of doing effects and you've learned how to do most of the techniques, you reach a point where it's not quite as challenging as it was. Whereas working with actors in dramatic situations the challenges are as variegated as dramatic situations can be. So there's always something there. So I'd have to say I probably enjoyed working with the actors more. There are a couple of scenes that do deal directly with that fear of being trapped in a very tight space with some sort of lethal presence, which is unseen, but you know it's there. And one of the fears that I've played on intentionally is that the parents' fear of danger for their child, and that's a dimension that didn't exist in the first film, because in giving Ripley a past and a larger life, I think that one can tap into emotions.
Got it?
Don't go, please.
Newt, I'm going to be right in the next room.
I'm not going to leave you, Newt. I mean that. That's a promise.
You promise?
I cross my heart.
And hope to die.
And hope to die.
Just got to wind back.
So we got half as much as I wanted and twice as much as we need, like most days. Debbie Ray would argue with that. We're looking at some material that I shot in a previous life 3 weeks ago. I dimly remember doing. It's part of the airlock sequence, the finale of the film, with Sigourney Weaver dangling for her life, basically. You'll have to see the movie if you want to see more and find out more about it.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know why they'll come. I think they'll probably come just to see what happens, you know. You know, is it going to come out of her? Is it going to come out of the cat? You know, I think they'll just come because they're curious.
If the first film was a funhouse ride where things jumped at you out of the dark, this one's a roller coaster ride where you can see it coming, but you can't stop.